sponsored by Credible. Great rates, none of the bull. So, there's always been an understanding. The NFL teams have talked about this for years. Port cities. LA's got a port. Miami's got a port. New Orleans has a port. New York's a port city. There's others, but coastal cities can often be harder to manage your players. Players are young. They've got a lot of money. They're in great shape. Port cities tend to be very active nightlives. There's a lot going on in port cities. And so it is, I think it's really interesting why I have so much respect for the Miami Heat organization. It's hard to be focused in Miami. I mean, the water's aqua blue. The people are beautiful. There's no state tax. You keep more of your money. And there's a lot to do in Miami. I mean, Miami is one of the great 3-day cities in America. It's probably my favorite. And I'm older. Like, I'm not staying out all night. But when I go to Miami, even I go sideways. And so it is harder to build a great culture in these cities. You know, the Marlins have been a mess forever. The Dolphins can't get their act together. Miami Hurricane football's been uneven. And here are the Heat year after year after year after year. The rebuilds are quick. I mean, all these big, heavily discussed cities, New York, Philadelphia, D.C., Boston, the only Eastern Seaboard franchise in the league that is well-run is Miami. And I'd argue it's the hardest city to be well-run in. There's a lot of distractions. Now, can you win a title in the NBA without an A-plus star? Bam Adebayo, Jimmy Butler, Victor Oladipo's back, Tyler Hero, excellent players. But what Miami proves is that a great culture, a commitment to chemistry, the right coach, defense, and a bench can go a long way. They're a number one seed. That you don't have to sell your soul or sell your identity to be formidable. Brooklyn sold their soul. They had chemistry, a good coach, players liked each other. They sold their soul for 2 stars, swept. Out in the first round 2 of the last 3 years. Lakers had a lot of young players, Brandon Ingram, Lonzo Ball, Kyle Kuzma. They sold it all out. Couldn't make the playoffs. There's something to be said about commitment on both ends. Miami's athletic, deep, they got a bench, and they demand a lot from their players. In a league where the players run it, and that's okay, since I was a little kid in the Pacific Northwest. You know, Spencer Haywood, the stars had the power over the front office. That's okay. And I don't know if they'll win titles, but a great example of what the Miami Heat are is Tyler Hero. It's classic Pat Riley. So they draft him. They get him a bit of a steal, 13th. And he stars first year in the bubble. Like 13th pick. I mean, come on. You get these kids out of college now, even the really good ones. They don't really connect unless they're a Ja Morant by like year 2 or 3 or 4. So Tyler Hero comes in and just explodes in the bubble. Year 2, a lot of Miami nightlife. Reportedly, got a little sideways. Struggled year 2. But at the end of year 2, Pat Riley calls him out, holds him accountable, rips him publicly. Who are you? I've had a lot better players around here than Tyler Hero. And now in year 3, 6th Man of the Year award. That's the Miami Heat. And they deserve a lot of credit. It is easy to get into trouble in Miami. It is nothing against Milwaukee, but that town just screams afternoon nap and bed by 8:45. Nothing against Cleveland. The Cleveland Flats rock. No, they don't. Not really. They don't. Miami rocks. They just don't have to have a term or a saying, Miami rocks, to feel good about themselves. Cleveland needs that. But Pat Riley and Spoelstra, hand in hand, smart guys, formidable, hold players accountable. And I'll tell you, they did for the last couple of years with LeBron. I felt like they were kind of selling their identity and soul for LeBron, but they'd won back-to-back titles. The Heatles were the talk of the league, and LeBron was in his prime, and D-Wade's like the mayor of the city, right? So, like, I got it. But I did feel a little bit like they were kind of losing themselves a little to LeBron. And in the 4th year, disappointing playoffs, he leaves, and they had to rebuild. But you can tell when a company's well run. Because the idea, I mean, I don't care if you're Alabama football, they've had a lot of downturns. They've had a lot of downturns with Alabama football. Kentucky basketball, they've had downturns. But you know when you're well run in the athletic department, you know when you're well run, when the downturns are brief. Because in the NBA, the Knicks have been in a 20-year downturn. The Lakers have been in a 9-year downturn. Like Miami had to go, rebuild, draft, build back up. They stayed with Spoelstra. They didn't listen to the critics. And here they are, number 1 seed in the East. I don't know if they can win a title. I said all year, I don't know if I buy this team. But now Oladipo is back, and they look more formidable. But they just hold players accountable. Hard practices. You have to play defense. You have to be committed to the culture. And I find them in a very distracted city where it's easy to get in trouble. Tyler Hero's a great example. Kid went sideways, lost himself. They brought him right back in, demanding, held him accountable, and he's off to the races to a great NBA career. Alex with the news. No. Turn on the news. Version of James Harden. Always has the ball. Initiates a ton of contact. That takes its toll on you over a game. Plays a lot of minutes. Everything goes through him. And he scores 35 to 38 points effortlessly. And then by the end of the game, he's gassed, and they're picking on him. Chris Paul was seeking him out at the end of the game. We looked it up this morning. Chris Paul went after Luka 50 times as the screen defender. They were seeking him out. That's what teams did to James Harden. Ryan Russillo, podcaster, came on, my buddy, yesterday, talked about Luka's style and how he has the ball so often. There's so many minutes. He's in every moment of the game. It wears guys out.
They are too Luka reliant. We've had an incredible run of statistical performances over a regular season, like historic stuff, right? The Westbrook season in 17, some of these Harden seasons. But I kept coming back to the point of like, these guys have the basketball more than anyone's ever had it regularly in history. So I went through usage rates, the top 20 usage rates in NBA history. And the playoff track record is terrible for these single-season players with the highest usage rates in the history of the game. And a lot of them are very recent years. The only player to ever get to a finals was Allen Iverson.
Mavericks only had 2 other players that even got the double figures, and one just had 11. So it says a lot when you score as much as Luka. When you're this centrifugal force, you know what his plus-minus was? Not to go all statty and stuff. Minus 28. It's James Harden. It's so much contact, so much ball usage, so much initiating everything. By the end of the game, you're just a liability. And by the way, as great as he's been, like Harden, he didn't come into the season in shape, did Luka. You also need some self-awareness as a star. He's got to figure out how to work with others. He and Porzingis hated each other. Make it work. You also need Luka to do something that it's quite possible international stars don't feel comfortable doing. Getting on the phone and recruiting a player. LeBron does it. KD does it. Steph does it. That's the NBA model. Now, international players, Dirk didn't want to do it. Luka didn't want to do it. Sometimes international players don't feel as comfortable doing that. But that's what Kawhi did with Paul George. And Kawhi doesn't even talk. He got out of his comfort zone and put his recruiting hat on. And he got Paul George to L.A. You've read those stories. You were as surprised as I was. So that's a responsibility, too, in the NBA. Self-awareness. Getting along with others. Getting on the phone and recruiting players. And I'll say this. You start looking at the West now. This all Luka all the time thing, it's got a pretty low ceiling in the playoffs. Phoenix is pretty young and going nowhere. Denver gets Jamal Murray back. The Clippers and Warriors are going nowhere. Memphis and Minnesota are young, made the playoffs, and feisty. And the Pelicans with Zion back. Watch out. So these teams have a second star. I know Luka's great. He's got to get along with people. I'm not saying Porzingis is any day at the beach. Got to get along with people. Got to get on the phone and recruit people. All Luka all the time, I'm watching it. It's James Harden. Now, their games may not be identical, but they initiate a ton of contact. They play a ton of minutes. And, both little weight, don't always feel like they're in the best shape. Jason Kidd after the game.
Yeah, he had a great game, but no one else showed. So, we got to get other guys, shooting the ball better. We can't win with just him out there scoring 30 a night. Not at this time of the year. And we're playing the best team in the league.
Yeah, you can't win with him not getting on the phone either. It's the new NBA model. He's got to get along with people. Speaking of James Harden. So, listen, you're all watching what I'm watching. I watched every minute of both games last night. Like, James Harden is now a 3. And I like James Harden. And I thought Philadelphia won the trade. I mean, they had to get Ben Simmons out of town. Draft picks? Who gives a rip? They're late first rounders. Who cares? Philadelphia is going to be very good. Those picks are irrelevant. There's 2 first rounders, one next year and one 5 years from now. Seth Curry's a nice rotational player. And Andre Drummond, no championships are won or lost by him. So I still love what Philadelphia did. But here's the issue with Harden. He's eligible for a 4-year